So in this course, I will give you a detailed view on how you can pitch to investors. I made this course because of my job. I see a lot of pitches every day. And there are some tips and tricks that I want to show you and a structure on how you can build a perfect pitch. In this course, we will talk about the preparation, the pitch itself, the practice, the attitude, and some tips and tricks. After this course, you should have a clear idea on what your next steps are and how you can structure your pitch. I made this course very adjustable, so it's also applicable for your case specific. So I cannot wait any longer. I'm ready to dive in and I hope you are too. And let's get started. So let's go over the agenda so you know what to expect from this course. First of all, we will talk about the preparation part, how you can prep for a pitch. Then we will talk about the pitch itself. So we will talk about the structure, but also the topics that you need to highlight. Afterwards, I will tell you about the importance of practicing it. Then I will also share a little bit more about how you present yourself and the attitude that comes with that. Lastly, I see a lot of pitches and I'm willing to share my tips and tricks especially for you. Let's not wait any longer and we're gonna get started. So first of all, you start a pitch with preparation. You're gonna look at everything that you need. You will probably gather way too much information, but the benefit of that is that you can scrape your list later on, depending on how long your pitch can be, for example. The first one is know your metrics. Investors are interested in the financial numbers behind the company, and they will probably ask you about them. So it's very important that you know them and that you know which numbers are important for your startup. For example, this can be growth numbers, this can be revenue numbers, or if you pre-revenue, this can be the tests that you have done. Secondly, we have know your market. It's important that the investors see that you know your market. So it's important that you have a deeper insight into the market. That you know if the market is growing or declining, and what is the impact of that linked to your startup. You can, for example, show the market value, or the total available market, or the market share that you want to get in the future. Overall, it's important to show investors that there is a big market opportunity there. So before actually structuring your pitch, make sure that you have those insights. If you don't, do some extra market research. Then we have the scale plan. This is typically where investors really look at. They want to see what's the scalability of your business. Of course, they're going to invest in you if they see a way on how they can make profits. So this is linked to your scale plan and your strategy on how to get there. They will, for example, look at the speed. How fast do you want to get somewhere? What will be their return on investments at what period? This is for you important to know, and you should be able to tell your investors all about it. So make sure that you have a scale plan before prepping for your pitch. Of course, linked to the scale plan is also the financing. What are the costs that you will have over the year? Is this ramp going to be enough to become financially independent? Or are you going to need to raise a couple more rounds? And in what period are you planning to do so? It's important that you know that these questions might pop up from investors, but it's also important that you as a startup know this for yourself as well. When looking at preparation for a pitch, one of the important things is that you know exactly what you want to get out of this pitch. What is it that you actually need from this pitch? Is it a financing round? Is it connections? Is it anything else that you want? This is important because it will adjust your pitch. For this course, I'm mainly focused on actually gathering a financial round. But with some small adjustments, you can make it work for your specific case. For example, it can be that you need personal support and that you want to get a board of advice, and that is the purpose of your pitch. And then we have one of the most difficult things, and that is valuation. How do you set a valuation for your company? When looking at early stage companies, there are a lot of methods out there that you can use. Some of them focus on market demand, some of them focus on projections, some of them focus on traction. Setting an early stage valuation is a much bigger topic, and if you want me to go more in depth about this, let me know and I might make a course about it. But some tips that I already want to share with you is that the investment that you want to raise should give you a runway of around 18 months if you're a little bit later stage. If you're very early stage, it should bring you to an MVP or your first paying customer. That should probably be around 8, 9, 10 months. This will bring you to a point where you proved something and you reached your next milestones. It can either be that you're financially independent now because you have great traction, or that you have proof and market validation so that you can start raising your next round. And something that I also want to share is that a higher valuation is not always better. You should really look into the terms and conditions linked to the valuation. Sometimes it's better to negotiate on terms instead of valuation. Of course, then you're already closing an investment and signing a contract, meaning that the investor believes in you and that your pitch was already great. So the valuation is mainly linked to your strategy, the market demands, traction that you can show, and of course, sometimes it's also linked to the region that you're in. Lastly, I want to zoom in on research your investors. Before pitching to somebody, know who you're gonna pitch for. You should know if they know the market or that you need examples of the market to explain the market demand or the problem that you're trying to solve. You can also see if they already invested in some startups that are linked with your startup or that are in some way similar to your startup. You have to look for the connection that you can make to investors. And if you can say, for example, your growth strategy is similar to a startup that you already invested in, it makes a link between you and the investor. You can also look in how big are those investments that they already made. Is this linked with what I'm looking for? Of course, you don't want to waste anybody's time. You also don't want to waste your time. So make sure from the beginning that you know your investors and that you see a potential match. So that was it for preparation, and I see you in the next video where we talk about the pitch. So let's now talk about the pitch itself. I'm gonna give you a little bit more of an idea about how pitch can be structured and what topics should be included. First of all, we're gonna start off with an introduction. Then we're gonna set the highlights. Then we're gonna zoom in a little bit more about the product. Then we will look at the growth. Where do you wanna go with your startup? Of course, we cannot forget your amazing team and who's building this startup. Then, of course, you have to really explain what your need is, what you want to get from the pitch. And then we're going to end with a conclusion. We will go in depth on each topic and I will give you some guidelines on these topics. So first of all, we start with an introduction. You will explain a little bit more who you are, what the company is all about, linked to the vision of the company. We'll also explain who you serve and what the product already is. This can be very simple by one picture of the product, or just your slogan that you used to use, or just your tagline that you use for your company. The goal here is to keep it simple for your investors. They should know who they're talking with, and they should know what the presentation is gonna cover. Then you have the highlights. You can either focus on your metrics or focus on the market demand. You can also do a little bit of a combination of both, and I'm gonna explain the difference. First of all, if you focus on the metrics, you're really going to focus on the numbers. Most of the times, this is for startups that already have numbers, that already have traction. This is great information and you should show it to your investors. When you focus on market demand, the goal is to let investors see that there is a huge market demand for your product, that the market opportunity is there. You will focus on the story behind the startup, and you will focus on what makes you different. So when you want your focus to be on the metrics, it's important that you know your metrics very well and that you choose the right ones to show investors. That can be, for example, your sales, your revenue, your sales pipeline, but also the number of customers, the amount of downloads, your active users. So really dive into your numbers and see what is applicable for you and what shows you in the best light possible. These are your highlights. It's important that you show yourself in the best light possible. You should be proud of the numbers that you have. Important to keep in mind when focusing on your metrics is that you should be able to anticipate questions by the audience. So be sure that the metrics that you know through and through. You will get questions about them and you will be challenged. This is also linked with making sure that your numbers support each other. Make sure that there are no contradictions in your numbers. And sometimes it's good to compare them with industry average metrics to see if you're above or below them. So to keep these in mind when focusing on metrics. So when you want to focus on the market demand, you're gonna have to answer some questions. One of them can be, how did you came across this opportunity in the market? This is a great story to tell your investors. Another one is, why is the need so strong? And lastly, what is the reason that your product is so equipped to solve these needs? What makes you stand out? The main goal is that you show your VCs that there is a huge market opportunity and that your product or your service is the only one that can satisfy these needs. When you focus on market demand, it's important that you show the market size, that you show how big the opportunity is. But also your differentiating factor, what makes you stand out. And lastly, the competition. Nobody is ever alone. And this is something that I personally really dislike when a startup tells me they're alone in the market. You'll always have competition, even if it's indirect. Make sure that you understand this competition and that you can anticipate on it, that you know why you're different or how you're going to be different in the future. Then we're at the big element, the product or service that you offer. Here it's always great to start with a story. Mankind evolved by telling stories. So we love to hear great stories. So make sure that there is a great story behind your startup. People also are more likely to remember stories. So put some storytelling elements in your pitch. For example, the story of Airbnb where they wanted to go to a conference and everything was booked, and that they just spent the night on an air mattress in some stranger's house. This is a great example of explaining the need, telling a story that everybody can link to, and it makes you feel connected to the startup because you can really see and experience the problem for yourself by listening to the story. One of the phrases that I love is sell the shizzle, not the steak. What does this mean? It actually means that you focus on the benefits that you create and not on the features that you have. It's really demonstrating the value that your product provides. For example, when you talk about Facebook notifications, Facebook is not going to say, yes, we have the feature notifications. Facebook is going to tell you that you're never going to forget another birthday anymore. That this is impossible, that you will be notified when it's somebody's birthday. They will show you the value of the features. So instead of explaining all the features to investors, Explain the value, use examples, use case studies, use a story where they can really see the value of your product or service. Lastly, you have to show the profitability. So what is it that stands out for you? Is it, for example, that you have a great business model, and this can be a new model for this industry, but also compare the cost of acquisition and the customer lifetime value. Of course, your customer lifetime value should be way higher than your cost of acquisition. So make sure that you know these numbers and make sure that you show that you can become a profitable business, that you have a viable business. If you're pre-revenue and you don't have all of this yet, then show predictions of where do you want to go and show your differentiation factor. This brings us with the slide where we talk about the growth. Where do you want to go? Investors want to see ambition. There are two elements they look at, ambition and how realistic it is. You're not pitching to a bank, so they want to see your optimistic view of the company. They want to see what your dream is. Of course, don't go over the top with this, because then it's not realistic anymore. One of the key elements to show here are KPIs. Make sure that it's very clear where the company wants to go. If you want to get your first customer in the next 3 months, that's an important KPI. That's an important milestone for investors to know. Show your next steps. Show the plan that you have. Make sure that it's structured. Make sure that it's built on something. And please don't forget to show past milestones. Every startup already achieved some milestones. Show them to investors. This will back up your growth plan because they see what you have already done. You can have the best product in the world, but without the right team, you're not going to make it a successful business. So show the team. Show them why this team is the perfect team. You don't have to go in depth. You don't have to show each employee's CV, but highlight some specific points. If you have years of experience within the industry, then this makes you stand out. If you, for example, have a very diversified team with many different skill sets, this can make you the perfect team. So really think about what you have within the team that another startup doesn't have and show those elements to investors. Sometimes it's also good to show them what you still need. For example, with the growth that you projected, you might need some new employees. Investors also have a big network, so make use of that and ask for what you need. If you need a great sales profile, maybe put it in your pitch and see if one of the investors knows somebody. It's also good to show them what you still need and that you're aware of this. Then we're going to talk about the need. It's important that you show investors exactly what you need from them. And if you focus that on a financial need, it's important that you identify what you're going to use it for. This doesn't need to be a detailed list of all your expenses. It can be an overall overview, but it's important that you link it to KPIs and achievements. For example, you can tell me, okay, I need so much money and 60% will be used for development, 40% will be used for marketing. That is the use of funds, and what we are going to achieve with that is 5,000 new customers in the next coming 9 months. This is then very linked to achievements. That is what investors want to hear. So make sure that you translate the use of funds into achievements. Lastly, we have the conclusion of the pitch. Make sure that you give a quick summary of everything and that you highlight what you want to highlight. And don't forget your call to action. What do you want investors to do after your pitch? You have to make it as simple as possible for them. For example, if you want them to connect with you on LinkedIn, make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up there. If you want contact details from them, make sure that they have a place to go to share those details with you. If you want personal introductions with them, for example, if you're at a network event, make sure that your call to action explains that investors can come to you after the pitch. So really think about what is the next action that I want investors to do and make a call to action about that. So that was it for the structure of your pitch. I hope you have a clear view now on how your pitch could be structured. Of course, you can make adjustments to your specific needs. For example, if your pitch is very short or should be very short because you only have a couple of minutes to pitch, it's great to include an appendix where you explain your numbers, where you go more in depth, where you show your market research. This will back up your short pitch and this will give investors extra information if they're willing to look into it deeper. But overall, these are the topics that should be in your pitch, even if it's a short one or a long one. It only depends on how deep you're gonna go into each topic. So I'm very excited to see you in the next video. Now that you have your pitch, it's so important to practice your pitch. Surround yourself by people who will give you honest feedback and present your pitch to them. If you do your pitch 10 times, your last one will be way better than your first one. And don't be afraid to go out there with your story and see if you can find different profiles. For example, you might be able to pitch to another founder. He will give you some insights that an investor might not give you. So make sure that you practice with different audiences. They will give you different points of feedback. And I cannot stress this enough, but it's so important to practice your pitch because it will take away the nerves that come with pitching. When the nerves are gone or slightly less, this will show in your attitudes. Be open, have an open attitude when you pitch to investors because they will challenge you and they will ask questions. Don't be defensive, but just be honest and try to answer them. One of the elements is be interesting. Don't be boring. You can use some great marketing tricks in your pitch to make it more exciting. Investors see a lot of different pitches, so make it stand out, but do this in a subtle way. You don't want to go overboard with this, but just one or two elements can make your pitch remarkable. And watch your body language. When you practice not only your pitch, but also your body language. For example, how do you stand and how is this perceived by the audience? You want to be relaxed, you want to be open, you want to be interesting. Looked at like a person who has something important to say, because that is what you are. You're a founder of a company that has a great story to tell. Then there are some tips and tricks that I want to share with you. First of all, think about the quality of your pitch deck. Make it pleasing to look at, but also make it reflect your business. And use, for example, your design guidelines. You can have a great pitch and you can tell a great story, but if your pitch deck doesn't reflect this, it will be reflected in how the audience perceives you. So make sure that you spend time on this. Then it's up to you to do the follow-up. You want to get something done from investors. Make sure that you have all the elements that you need to present a follow-up. For example, if you expect them to link with you on LinkedIn, make sure that you're the one sending messages out. Make sure that you keep them up to date about the company status. This you can do by using a newsletter specifically for possible investors. But it's up to you to follow up. Investors are very busy people and they see a lot of startups. So don't be afraid to push your startup to them. And lastly, be authentic. Be yourself. In the end, if an investment actually happens, you're gonna have a long-term relationship with this investor. Make sure that you understand each other and make sure that he really gets to know you. So be yourself, be open, be authentic. Just go for it. You can do it. I know you can. Congratulations, you finished this course. what means that I wish you good luck with your pitch to investors. Please let me know what you liked about this course, and if you have any ideas on what I should do next, let me know.